Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Moles Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to talk about game week 17 of the Premier League season, the first game week of 2021. It was a bit of a damp squib to end 2020, wasn't it? Very few goals and obviously two games being called off, but I did manage to close the gap by 7 points, so it's now 17 points. Still a good lead for you, Matt, but I'm eating into it now.
Yeah, 17 points is a lot, isn't it? But like you say, you got a really good week, didn't you? And it only takes a couple of those to pull it back. So it should be interesting this week.
Yeah, and the first game of this game week on New Year's Day at 5:30 p.m. is Everton versus West Ham. How do you see that one going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? To start off, obviously Everton have had a little break, haven't they? Obviously their game against City got called off, and I was thinking about this earlier. I don't know whether does that help you or does it not? I know there's a lot of games at this point, and managers talk about continuity and sort of, especially after beating Sheffield United in their last game. If they'd have gone into the City game, got a really good result, they'd have bounced again. But they've just had a little bit of time off now, probably more time to work on other things on the training ground, etc. But probably managers probably lean towards having games at this stage to get games in the legs. But I think Richarlison might be back for this game, which he wouldn't have been back for the last game. So that's big for them. Obviously, Rodriguez probably come a bit too soon. Maybe the FA Cup game, he'll be back in the side. But they've got some players coming back. Everton, West Ham, on the other hand, obviously Antonio was back off the bench in their last game at Southampton, and they miss him so badly, don't they? You talk about Haller. I mean, it was another strange performance from Haller. I mean, I was thinking about this. He's such a big presence, isn't he? What is he, 6'3", 6'4"? He's a massive man. He should be bullying defenders, and he just isn't. He's very passive. He doesn't really do too much. Obviously, David Moyes made changes, didn't he, for the Southampton game, brought in Lanzini, and he didn't really perform. Ben Rama's not really hit the ground running since he's gone there. So it's been problems for West Ham. I still think they're having a good season, but I mean, this is a very, very tough game, isn't it, to go to Everton? Obviously got ambitions of finishing in the top four this season, and they'll be keen to put another 3 points on the board. This was a really tight one. There's games like this season almost want to draw, but I just think Everton at home, I just have to lean towards them. I think obviously they're not going to be fans anymore, is there? Obviously no fans in the grounds anymore for Merseyside. They were the last two, weren't they? So no more. But yeah, just Everton here, 2-1.
2-1. Yeah, I've gone Everton as well. I've gone 1-0. I think the goals have dried up a little bit after that bonkers start to the season when they were flying. And I think the goals have dried up. And the last game week especially, I think that was a sign of maybe the amount of games taking their toll on teams. I'd probably say if you're an Everton manager, then you'd be happy with that game being postponed. Obviously, they do then have to play it later in the season, which will cause a fixture congestion then. But this is the most congested spell of the season. And as it happens, they've had, 6 days off. So it's still not a long time off, particularly. It's not like they would have got rusty in that time. But it is just the rest when most teams don't have it at this time of year. So I think they'll probably be viewing that as a bit of a bonus at this stage, whether it turns out to be. And when it gets rearranged for later in the season, it might cause a pile up then. We need to wait and see with that one. But they'll have fresher legs than most teams will have at this time of year. So Ancelotti will be sort of pleased by that. Obviously, he wants to get games on the board and points on the board. But, he saw Liverpool and Leicester drop points, didn't they? So the two of the three teams above them in the table, and he gained a game in hand on them as well. So still sitting fourth in the table despite not playing. Victory in this game now will take them within 1 point of Liverpool, the leaders. So there's plenty to play for them, and they'll be full of motivation to get another 3 points on the board and return to winning ways after that postponement. I'm backing them to do it 1-0. They scraped past Sheffield United by the same scoreline on Boxing Day in their last match, whereas West Ham, obviously, that 0-0 draw against Southampton, which isn't a poor result considering Southampton have been pretty good, especially at home. And they're pretty evenly matched so far this season, Southampton and West Ham. So they won't be viewing that as a poor result necessarily. But they do need to start returning to winning ways sooner rather than later, because it's 4 without a win now for them. 3 draws, which obviously are better than defeats. But, if you've got designs of pushing for that top 7, which West Ham, after their start to the season, might have started to think they could do, they need to start getting more wins on the board. I don't see that happening here. I've gone for 1-0 Everton win, personally. Also on New Year's Day, the second game on New Year's Day is Manchester United versus Aston Villa. Man United, well, I'll let you talk about them. They're now up to second, 3 points off Liverpool with a game in hand. Continued their really good run with that late win against Wolves. But they face a Villa side in really good form themselves. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is a really tough game, isn't it, for United? The Wolves game was difficult. I thought Wolves were good in 2/3 of the pitch, but then into the final third, they were obviously missing missing Jimenez, which I've spoken about a lot. But United, it's just what they've done in previous seasons, don't particularly play well and come up with a late goal. Obviously, it's more than a slight deflection. It's slightly fortunate that went in for Marcus Rashford, but he's obviously had a go. And, if you don't buy a ticket to the raffle, then you're not going to win it. So he's obviously had a shot and thought this might go in. It has. Obviously 3 points off Liverpool now with a game in hand. Obviously Liverpool dropping points, which was nice to see. And yes, this is a very, very dangerous game. I mean, the Villa-Chelsea game, just another demonstration from Aston Villa of, what a good side they are, really. I thought they were terrific in that game. Obviously, Chelsea fancied that they might, probably edge towards 3 points, but I thought Villa were worth a point in that game. And I think their away form this season, I think it's the third best in the Premier League. And I think they've only conceded 3 goals away from home in the Premier League this season, which is just absolutely remarkable, isn't it? The performances they've put in. So they lost at West Ham, didn't they? I think it was early this season on the road, their only defeat. But apart from that, I mean, they've been absolutely unbelievable on the road, and their position in the table is obviously sitting 5th with 2 games in hand over a lot of sides, 1 game in hand over United, 8 wins this season. It's such a dangerous game for United. Obviously, team selection will be interesting again. Solskjaer made a few changes, didn't he? Will Fred come back into the team for this one? McTominay. Obviously, there's Lindelof, injury doubt, and Cavani started last time. There's a lot of different things. Will Pogba play again? Martial probably come back into the side. So I think there'll be some switching around from United. It's a very, very dangerous game, but I just think United are playing well enough at the moment to win this game. So very, very tight, and Villa will be good value, I think, but I've just gone 2-1 United.
Yeah, I went back and forth on this. I almost went for United win. I think there's going to be a lot of changes for most teams because they made so many changes in the last round of fixtures, and because of that, maybe you can only look at their last result to a limited amount. But I think with Aston Villa, the way they played against Chelsea really made me back them to get something out of this game. So I have gone for 2-2 draw at the end. They were, as you mentioned, they were really impressive against Chelsea. Came within the crossbar's width of winning that game through that McGinn stunner, which it was so unfortunate not to go in. So yeah, very nearly came away with a win from Stamford Bridge, and they've been so impressive this season. As you mentioned, 5th place with only 14 games played, got a couple of games in hand, or at least 1 game in hand over most of the teams around them in the table. So they'll start thinking about European football, which after last season, when they only narrowly avoided relegation, is a huge improvement, and Dean Smith really deserves huge credit for that. And obviously they started really well, obviously, and then went through a bit of a poor patch, but they seem to be in good form now. And as you mentioned, it stemmed from that really good defensive record. That goal against Chelsea they conceded was their first in 5 Premier League games that they conceded. So defensively, they have been sound, but United have been scoring more goals lately. Obviously against Wolves they needed to wait till late, and that lucky deflection to get that 1 goal. But I do see more goals in this. Maybe it's a bit ambitious considering that Aston Villa record, but I do see goals in this one. I think both teams have got attacking threats. Ollie Watkins needs to get back on the goal trail sooner rather than later, but he's getting chances. It's not, you really start worrying when people aren't getting chances. He's been a bit unfortunate with VAR at times as well, Watkins. So I'm sure he'll start finding the back of the net again sooner rather than later. Maybe in this game as well. But yeah, I can see goals in this one. I've gone for a 2-2 draw. On Saturday, if you can still keep track of the days on this time of year, January 2nd, Saturday is Tottenham versus Leeds. Tottenham obviously had their game postponed as well because of coronavirus against Fulham, but that was due to cases in the Fulham camp, so Tottenham's game should definitely go ahead. They're playing a Leeds team who obviously thrashed West Brom 5-0. I think you backed them to lose that one 1-0, didn't you, Leeds? How do you see this one going?
Yes, I mean, the Leeds West Brom game. I just thought after watching West Brom against, recently City, Liverpool, I thought they'd, be much better. But that game was ridiculous. And Leeds for me in that game were remarkable. The player that I think's impressed me the most for Leeds is Rafinha. They brought him in the summer and just doing incredible. I think you put him in your team of the week, didn't you, for this week? Yeah. And he's just been unbelievable, isn't he? Even the games that Leeds haven't particularly played well in against United at Old Trafford. They played well, obviously lost 6-2, but he was just, every time he got the ball, he was positive. He wants to make things happen. Scored a fantastic goal, didn't he, against West Brom, and they are great. And this was the game, to be honest, I was running through the predictions, and this is the one I left till last because you just feel like anything could happen in this game. It's so hard to predict Leeds this season. Tottenham, I think Jose Mourinho had a bit of a dig at the Premier League, didn't he, for saying he put on social media that there was a few hours before the game, there's sort of him and Ledley King sitting around waiting to find out if the Fulham game's going to go ahead, which is is not ideal. It's obviously can't really be avoided. Can it be avoided at this stage? It's just such a difficult time for fixtures. Obviously, it doesn't look like there will be a break, which for me is good news. I don't know what your opinion on that is. I just don't really feel the need at the moment to do a 2-week break. But yeah, it's a really big game. Tottenham, like say, they drew a Wolves last time out, and they'd have been really keen to get back to winning ways against Fulham after the disappointment of conceding late on against Wolves. But it's such a tough one, to be honest with you. I really struggled with this one. I'm not that confident. I've actually landed on 3-1 Tottenham in the end. I just think Leeds away from home, they will give you chances. United put 6 past them. Tottenham, obviously, we all know about their capabilities in the final third. Kane, Son, all capable of, coming up with some goals. So I think Leeds will score, but it's a really tough one. But just landed on 3-1 Tottenham in the end.
Yeah, I've gone 2-1 Tottenham. Leeds will try and go toe-to-toe with Tottenham, though, so there are probably goals in this one for Tottenham. Obviously, without a winning 4 in the Premier League now, Tottenham, and there's actually, when you consider the perception of the season so far, there's only 3 points between them in the league this season, and it was only a few weeks ago we were talking about Tottenham as title contenders, and they were top of the league at that stage as well. So 3 points between them. Obviously, Tottenham have now played 1 game fewer because of that Fulham postponement. But yeah, Leeds, if they win this, go level on points with Tottenham. It seems crazy to say where we were a couple of weeks ago, and I think Leeds were down in 14th and Tottenham were up top of the table. So that shows how quickly things can change. But yeah, it's the big question is what Leeds to expect. I think we know they're going to go toe-to-toe with Tottenham. They did that with Liverpool and ran them close, lost 4-3. They did that with Man City and drew 1-0. They did that with Manchester United and lost 6-2. So yeah, it could really go any way. And their last 4 results, Leeds, obviously 3 wins from them, they'll take that, but 5-2 against Newcastle, 6-2 defeat against Man United, grind out a 1-0 win against Burnley, and then go and beat West Brom 5-0. It's so hard to know what to expect from them in terms of not just which way the result's going to go, but the actual scoreline. Are they going to score loads? Are they going to concede loads? Or are they going to do both? But yeah, I've gone for 2-1 to Tottenham in this one. It is such a game to call. It's like throwing a dartboard at numbers for Leeds this season. You don't know what's going to come up or what they're going to do. So yeah, bit of a stab in the dark, but you might as well go for it. I've gone for 2-1 to Tottenham, but both gone for Tottenham wins in that one. Crystal Palace versus Sheffield United is also on Saturday at 3 p.m. kickoff. You predicted the goalless draw with Sheffield United. There were a couple last week, but not that one. That was 1-0 Burnley in the end, as expected. Not too many goals. This is another one which might suggest a goalless draw. I personally have again gone for 1-0 Sheffield United defeat. There was a stat, I can't remember how many it was, how many of their defeats. It might have been 8 or 9 that they've lost by a 1-0 scoreline this season, which is just, it shows that the defence isn't the main problem necessarily. It's their goal scoring, which we've known for a while. 8 goals scored all season. You're not going to win games like that. And as is proven to be, no wins in 16 now, still only 2 points from that. It's just such a dreadful record. And the last 2, obviously, 1-0 defeats to Everton, and that Burnley one will be particularly disappointing for them. But I can see them fall into that same fate this time. Crystal Palace haven't been in great form themselves. No wins in 5. 1-1 draw against Leicester last time out was good, a good result. They'll be happy with that, but it was a much changed Leicester side. At least they, stopped the rot after conceding 10 without replying their 2 games prior to that. But yeah, I do see them getting back to winning ways in this one. Sheffield United, we've said it pretty much every week, it's just so hard to back them getting anything, even scoring a goal at the moment. And if you can't back them to score a goal, you can't back them to win a game. At best, they're going to get a point from these 0-0 draws. But yeah, I can see another 1-0 defeat for them, unfortunately. I've gone for Crystal Palace in this one.
Yeah, exactly the same. 1-0 up, probably because of that stat that you're talking about. I think it, like you say, is 8 or 9 their defeats this season, 1-0. And I don't know if that's, obviously you'd rather lose 1-0 than 4-0, obviously, but it's still a defeat, and it's 14 from 16 this season. 2 points. They're 11 points off 17th place Brighton, so it's difficult, isn't it? It's getting a lot more difficult, and they actually had loads of the ball, didn't they, against Burnley? Obviously conceded from a corner, a good header from Ben Mee, to be fair. That wasn't really that tightly marked, but he went for it, didn't he? And I was looking through the Sheffield United team, and I thought if they go down, what teams are really going to take players from them? Obviously Brewster has been spoken about. He struggled this season. I think McGoldrick's a really good player, so you fancy a couple of players would look at them, but you just look around the team. So many players underperformed last season, and are they championship players now? Probably being found out of touch. Maybe that's a little bit harsh because they played well last season, but it doesn't really scream out that much quality at the moment. And Yeah, Palace. I backed the 1-1 for the Palace Leicester just because I thought Leicester after the United game, I thought he would make changes, Rodgers, and that obviously came to. I think Zaha was on the score sheet again for Palace, wasn't he? He's having a really good season, but he needs help from elsewhere. There's no doubt about that. I mean, what Palace in the table at minute 15th. I mean, 19 points from 16 games. It's not great, but I mean, they're 8 points above the relegation zone at this stage, and I don't think Palace will be in any trouble this season. But it's just, what are they going to do? Are they going to push for top half? I don't think they're good enough. Are they, maybe they're 13th, 14th, maybe they're the 13th, 14th best side in the league. That's probably about right, to be honest. But these are the games they obviously want to win. Want to win all the time. But against Sheffield United, they're going to be the favourites. And yeah, the same as you, for the same reasons, to be honest. They've gone 1-0 Palace.
Yeah, Hodgson will be viewing this as the best chance to stop the rot,
Yeah.
really, and get a win back on the board. Brighton also need to get a win on the board. They are now, 7 games without a victory, and still only 2 all season from their 16 games. And we've given them plenty of credit here, but if you don't get the points on the board, then, you're always going to be in trouble. It's only 2 points between them and Fulham at the moment. Fulham now have that game in hand, although that will, of course, be against Tottenham because that one got postponed. Brighton play Wolves on Saturday. Wolves, obviously, coming into it off the back of that late defeat to Man United, which would have really hurt them. They got their late goal themselves against Tottenham before that, but it's now 1 win in 6 games for them. So they need a win on the board. They've dropped into the bottom half, into 12th. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I mean, it's another tight one, isn't it, to be honest? I thought the thing that stood out for me for the Brighton-Arsenal game was, the changes that Graham Potter made. He left a lot of players on the bench. Mopé was on the bench. Trossard was on the bench. Welbeck, Connolly didn't even get on. It was a strange selection. I thought they were quite good in stages against Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal were terrific, and I don't think Arsenal needed to do that much really to win the game, which is probably a little bit disappointing more than a little bit disappointing for Brighton and their supporters. I thought it was a bit of a nothingy performance, and it's another really big one, isn't it? You're talking about games that you need to win. Obviously, as good as Wolves have been this since they come up to the Premier League, I just think the game at Old Trafford was, encompassed what they're good at and what their problems are at the moment. Thought they were really good, in sort of areas of the field. The defensive third, they defended well, they moved the ball well through the midfield, but just lacking that focal point up front. Adama Traore still hasn't scored this season. I think Pedro Neto is a really, really good player. I think he's going to be terrific for them moving forward. But they just need a centre forward. They need a focal point, someone to hit and play off, because they've got enough good players elsewhere. But I mean, it's a really difficult one. I think I've actually just landed on a draw in this one. I think Brighton, obviously, there will be changes. I think, Mopé will come back in, Trossard will come back in. I think he will freshen it up, Graham Potter. And I think Nuno's got a lot of options, but that many quality options, experienced options at the moment with Wolves, they do confuse me when I watch them this season, talking about where they are. 7 defeats this season from 16, which is not good for a side that has ambitions of pushing for the top 7. So just a draw here in the M11.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. I think Brighton, they've drawn a lot of games this season. 7 of their 16 have been draws.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be too disappointed with the draw against Wolves, even though Wolves are in pretty, poor form themselves. Maybe not poor, but a bit inconsistent and not getting the wins that they'd want to match their performances from the last 2 seasons. You mentioned Traore there. I think it's actually no goal or assist in his last 20-odd Premier League games. And when you're talking about a player who 6 months ago was being touted as a 60, 70 million pound player, that's just not good enough. And with the attributes he's got, unrivaled pace, he's probably got to be the fastest player we've ever seen in the Premier League, and the strength. In terms of players who it's impossible to defend against, he is right up there, just because you can't do anything about it. The likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold have said that in the past. He's just impossible to defend against. So you expect more from him. He does need to start showing more, and obviously stepping up in Jimenez's absence is even more important. Obviously, the transfer window is opening on 2nd of January, and Wolves have already said they want a striker, and that is really needed for them. 15 goals from their 16 games this season really highlights that. But yeah, until that happens, I can't see them scoring too many. So I've also gone for 1-1 in this one, both the same in that one. 8 p.m. on Saturday is West Brom versus Arsenal. Arsenal finally got back-to-back wins on the board, beat Chelsea on Boxing Day, and then nudged past Brighton last time out 1-0 at the Amex. And West Brom 5-0 defeat against Leeds, following up that 1-1 draw with Liverpool. How do you see this one going?
Yes, Arsenal obviously, back-to-back wins now, like you say. I thought they were like I said in the last one, good against Brighton without having to be brilliant. I thought obviously Saka was there. I said it in the last podcast. I think Saka's their best player by, a considerable distance. I think he's more important than Aubameyang. I just think for the future of Arsenal, what a player to have. Obviously, he's gone with youth recently. Martinelli is another excellent young player, and Smith Rowe was good against Brighton. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic for Arsenal. But I mean, you could say this is a nice game for them. But after back-to-back wins, they're now expected to win. Obviously, they weren't expected to beat Chelsea, so there was a little bit of maybe pressure off them in a sense, maybe a pressure on Mikel Arteta, but in terms of the team. But I just think. See, West Brom was so, I don't think Sam Allardyce's comments really would have gone that well after the match. I think he said something along the lines of, we need better players than what we've got at the moment, which is obvious. But if you're in the dressing room and you're hearing that, you're probably thinking, it's not great because have I got much of a future here? You want to obviously play at the highest level, play in the Premier League, but if you're going to be shipped out, then your confidence ahead of the Arsenal game is not what you want to hear, to be honest. So it's a strange one, this one. It's similar to, maybe a little bit similar to the Brighton game. I've actually just gone Arsenal here 2-1. I just think Arsenal are a nice little run at the moment, playing some okay stuff. They've obviously got a lot more sort of firepower in the final third of Aubameyang coming back from injury in the last game, and you fancy him to maybe, get among the goals at some point. He's been under par this season, but West Brom they can. I mean, you've seen them play well this season. You get to the bigger sides, Liverpool, Manchester City defended excellently, and I think they will give Arsenal a really tough game. It's a night game. It'll be freezing cold, and it will be uncomfortable, I think, for Arsenal. But I just think they'll get there in the end. I've gone 2-1 Arsenal.
Yeah, I've gone 2-0 Arsenal. I can't really see West Brom scoring. It's hard to back them the way they're playing, especially against big teams. And Arsenal, as much as they've underperformed this season, they've got the players where Allardyce, you'd expect him to set up similar to how he did against Liverpool, which obviously worked. But at home, it hasn't worked so much for them. They maybe take a few more risks and get caught out a bit more. Obviously, 2 home games under Sam Allardyce, they've lost by an aggregate scoreline of 8-0 so far, which you don't really associate with Sam Allardyce's teams. You associate them with being a little bit more sturdy at the back. But that 5-0 defeat to Leeds last time out, really disappointing result for West Brom, obviously. Maybe that will encourage him to tighten up even more for this Arsenal one, because he won't want to be on the end of 2 heavy defeats in a row. And I don't expect it to be that heavy, but I think Arsenal just finding a bit of their groove again. They're by no means firing on all cylinders. I think the Brighton one was only a narrow victory. Obviously, the Chelsea one was a really big boost and might prove to be the turning point in their season. I still don't think their squad is good enough to really push even for the top 4 this season. But I think they've still got players who, last season and previous seasons would fall into the category of very good players. The likes of Aubameyang, Lacazette is still a very good player, even if he's in and out of the team. Saka, as you say, is coming into his own at the moment. So yeah, they've got the players to hurt West Brom, and I can see them getting the victory here. So yeah, I've gone for 2-0 to Arsenal in this one. On Sunday, there are 3 games scheduled. 2 of them are in serious doubt, especially the Burnley Fulham one, because of those coronavirus cases in the Fulham camp, which led to the postponement of their game against Tottenham. As things stand, they're still due to go ahead. Burnley obviously host Fulham. They beat Sheffield United 1-0 last time out. They're not scoring many goals, Burnley, still 9 this season, but they're managing to pick up points along the way, which is obviously crucial to do it, and that you need a good defensive record to do that. But it's only 1 defeat in their last 6 Premier League games now for Burnley, 3 wins in that time, including 1 goal victories over Arsenal, Wolves, and that one over Sheffield United. I can see them getting another 1-0 victory on the board. This is another one which, could fall into the category of a possible goalless draw, but Burnley do seem to be grinding out those wins now, and I can see them doing it again. And if they do that, they could climb as high as, they probably won't because of goal difference, but they could climb as high as 14th in the table, which, when you consider where they were after a few weeks of the season, is a really impressive recovery. But yeah, Fulham not in great form themselves. They're 18th in the table, still only 2 points from safety, 4 draws in a row, and obviously that postponed game last time out. But yeah, I can see Burnley coming away with this 1-0 win.
Yeah, I thought you have gone the same. It just cries out, doesn't it? 1-0 Burnley in this game. I think you touched on Fulham. I think their problems, Mitrovic is a player who spoke about before the start of the season. He got 2 Premier League goals this season, which is not, if you're going to keep Fulham up, you probably need to be hitting maybe 13, 14 Premier League goals this season. And he can still do that in the second half of the season. I think Bobby Reed's got 4. He's played quite well this season. And Lookman's come up with a couple. Cavallero's got 1. I think that was from the penalty spot, wasn't it? But I mean, I mean, it's the preparations are far from ideal for this game. Like you say, don't know if it's actually going to go ahead at the moment. In huge doubt, and it can't help the players, can it? I mean, the preparations for Fulham and Burnley, to be honest, because you don't really know whether you're definitely playing. You're preparing for a game, and it might be cancelled, and it might be the next game you have to prepare for. So you have to change your shape if they're going to do that. So it's obviously a difficult one. Burnley, lack of goals, like you say, is a problem. I think Chris Wood missed some chances in the last game, and he needs a goal. I think they've got quality in the final third, but lucky enough for them, they are quite solid at the back at the moment. And I thought Tarkowski again was really good the other night. I think a player I've mentioned a few occasions, and I think Burnley would do really well to keep him next summer, because I think he's a really good player that could easily play for top 7, top 8 side. Wolves, maybe Southampton, someone like that. But yeah, it's a really, really tough game for Fulham. I think going to Burnley is always difficult, and preparation's not ideal. So yeah, 1-0 Burnley.
Going for 1-0 wins in that one. Newcastle versus Leicester is also on Sunday. Newcastle, they'll be delighted with that 0-0 draw against Liverpool last time out. They were obdurate there. They had Carl Darlow in really good form to keep Liverpool at bay. The first team to stop Liverpool scoring in the Premier League so far this season. Coming off the back of those back-to-back defeats against Brentford and Man City. The goal scoring might still be an issue, a concern for Steve Bruce. That's 3 games without scoring a goal. And there are moments of discontent still amongst the supporters. But, a draw against Liverpool, you've got to take that at the moment. They are in 14th place now as they welcome a Leicester side in 3rd place in the table. But back-to-back draws, as we said earlier, Brendan Rodgers made a lot of changes for that Crystal Palace game. You'd expect them to be closer to full strength again for this one. The likes of Vardy coming back into the starting lineup. I think if Vardy started that game against Palace, Leicester win that game, because there was obviously the penalty miss. Another good chance here Iheanacho missed, which you'd expect Vardy to take. So, Vardy's presence in the starting lineup could have been the difference between 3 points and 1 point in that game against Crystal Palace. So you'd expect him to be back in the starting lineup for this one. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I've gone away win here. I think Leicester's obviously away form this season is only behind Manchester United, or they've taken the same amount of points as United. To be honest, they've taken 19 points from 8 games, played a game more than United on the road. But Leicester's form, I just think talk about back-to-back draws. Like you say, the Palace won loads of changes against Manchester United. They were debatable whether they were worth a point. They played quite well. Obviously, Harvey Barnes is in really good form at the moment, isn't he? He's playing excellently. And just think type of game, it's difficult because it's probably the easy one to go for another goalless one after watching Newcastle against Liverpool. Obviously, Newcastle had to rely on, some good save late on than in Carl Darlow. I think, it was a bit of a scramble, wasn't there, in the box, and almost fell for Salah, but they managed to get it clear, Newcastle, and wasn't particularly pretty from Newcastle. I thought they played some good football at times, but obviously had to hold on a touch to get a really good point. And just think, coming into this game, probably easy to back a draw again, but I just think Leicester, it would have been a tough game against Liverpool, your energy zapping, all over the pitch. Leicester, on the other hand, I don't want to say the Palace game was too intense, and obviously loads of players coming back into the side. So I just think Leicester need to win if they're going to stay in and around the top positions in the table. And like I say, I think it will be very, very tight, but just Leicester 1-0.
Yeah, I've gone Leicester 2 now. I went for the same score in the Palace-Leicester game. And for the same reasons, really. I expect it to be a similar sort of game to what I expected that to be, with Leicester obviously back at full strength, which I think could be the difference between them winning and losing the game. Newcastle, it's difficult to back them to score at the moment. They've obviously do have Callum Wilson, who we've mentioned a few times, who is capable of scoring in most games. His record this season, I think, is 8 goals in 13 now after the Liverpool game. His record's really good this season, and probably enough to be the difference between them surviving comfortably and maybe being in a relegation battle. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see Newcastle maybe get on the score sheet, but 3 games without a goal, I can see that extending to 4. And Leicester getting the goals they need to win. Because as you say, if they want to carry on pushing towards the top of the table, victory temporarily will take them to within 1 point of Liverpool. Having played a game more, Liverpool obviously in action on Monday, which we'll come to in a moment. But yeah, I mean, they'll still have designs of the top 4 this season, especially in such an open season. They'll certainly believe they can challenge for Champions League football, potentially at least. There's still murmurs of them being in the title race. They're probably a little bit too inconsistent with that, but most teams in the Premier League are inconsistent this season, so they'll always fancy their chances, particularly what happened to them a few seasons ago. They'll never rule it out again, I don't think. So yeah, I can see them returning to winning ways in this one. 2-0 for me to Leicester in this one. Also on Sunday should be the standout fixture of the round, Chelsea versus Man City. Obviously, that is also in doubt because Man City had their game postponed due to coronavirus in their camp, and we don't really know which players tested positive or whether it's majority staff members or there are reports that half of the team tested positive, which obviously could affect their chances going into this game. But they are the form team going into this game. Their last outing was a 2-0 win over Newcastle, which made it 3 wins in all competitions, whereas Chelsea obviously drew against Aston Villa, and as we mentioned earlier, were the crossbars width away from losing that game. They've only won one of their last 6 games across all competitions. That was against West Ham, but obviously the defeat to Arsenal, Frank Lampard seems to be getting more and more frustrated on the touchlines at these performances and isn't really shying away from telling his players exactly what he expects and exactly where they're falling short. 6th in the table now, they're 7 points off leaders Liverpool, so certainly not out of it, certainly not out of the top 4 picture either, but it's a poor run, and for a team which was being tipped as title contenders, it's not really good enough for them, so they need to return to winning ways. Obviously this is a very difficult game for them. Man City usually turn up in these big sorts of matches, and I can see them coming away with a 2-1 win here. Obviously that comes with the caveat of which players are going to be missing through coronavirus, and obviously we know a couple of them already, but if some of their biggest stars, if the game does indeed go ahead, if the biggest stars are missing, that will obviously boost Chelsea's chances. But yeah, without knowing that, I'm going to go for Man City 2-1 in this one.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same 2-1. I think a statement, wasn't there, yesterday from Manchester City that they're going to return to training. There was no new cases, which is obviously excellent news for this game, looking like it will. It does look like it will go ahead. I think obviously there's still a slight doubt. We don't really know. Nothing is certain, is it, in these times? But it does look like that will be the case, which is obviously excellent news because it's a really good game on paper, and hopefully that transmits onto the field. I just think Chelsea, I mean, I even said it when Chelsea were playing really well at the top. I still wasn't that convinced by them, by Frank Lampard, by, the Villa game. Obviously, he made changes. And I think the most fascinating thing for me for this game will be, Kai Havertz and Werner were both on the bench against Villa. Are they going to both come back into the side? You fancy Werner will, but you wouldn't be surprised to see Havertz on the bench again. And it's a lot of money to spend on a player that, so he's going to take time. He's obviously very, very talented and very, he's got a lot of ability, but I think just is he that suited to the Premier League? He looks a little bit lost, a little bit too quick for him at the moment. He's obviously, I think he needs to bulk up a little bit more. He's quite slight, isn't he? His frame, I know he's quite a tall man, but he does need to, I think, get more a bit physical to deal with the pressures of the Premier League on a weekly basis. So I think team selection for Chelsea will be fascinating in this game. You fancy Pulisic might play. Sorry, obviously Hudson-Odoi played 90 minutes against Villa, but was okay, not without doing too much. So it's obviously a very, very interesting game. Like you say, City, not entirely clear who is definitely going to be available, but I just think City, they played poor against United, didn't they, a few weeks ago at Old Trafford. But I just think this season that they've got the ability to go and win at grounds like this, and Chelsea's recent form hasn't been great. So tight game, but same as you, 2-1 City.
Yeah, I think with Chelsea, I think I can see Lampard maybe losing a bit of patience with Timo Werner the way things are going. He took him off at half-time against Arsenal, obviously left him out against Aston Villa, and he's got so much choice in those areas of the field that Werner really does need to step it up, unless he's going to lose his spot on a regular basis. You've got to say on form, the likes of Olivier Giroud warrants a start ahead of Timo Werner at the moment, because Werner's just, he's not even hitting the target at the moment. He keeps putting them over the crossbar at the moment. So a lot for him to do, but both going for 2-1 Man City wins on that one. The final match of the game week is Southampton versus Liverpool on Monday night. Liverpool, it's been a poor Christmas to New Year period for them. Drop points against West Brom and Newcastle, both pretty disappointing, obviously, results and performances. They didn't offer too much. Carl Darlow, we mentioned, made a few really good saves, but Liverpool would have fancied their chances to create a bit more against Newcastle than they did. Southampton also struggling a bit in terms of results and goal scoring at the moment. 3 games without a goal now, 4 games without a win. Seen them slip down the table down to 9th. I'd still be pretty happy with their first half of the season so far, but as we've seen and already mentioned, a few bad results and you can really slip down that table and suddenly you're in the bottom half of the table. Don't think for 1 second they're going to be anywhere near a relegation battle, but if they don't return to winning ways soon, a lot of that good work they did during the first half of the season might be undone. This is obviously a very difficult match for them. Liverpool away from home haven't been great. Again, against Newcastle, weren't great. The obviously standout one is that 7-0 win against Crystal Palace. But other than that, they haven't been great away from home this season. I think that was only their second away win of the season. That said, for me, the big positive, obviously the Newcastle result was a disappointing one, but the big positive was Thiago coming back, and literally as soon as he came on, his first pass he played was just one of those passes. Liverpool don't have midfielders at the moment who play those passes, the ones round the corner rather than out wide to the fullbacks that just break the lines, and immediately if someone takes it on the half turn, they're at the back line. And he played 3 or 4 of those passes in his first 10 minutes on the field. So I think I originally went for a draw in this one. I can see Southampton potentially getting something out of it, but then I think Thiago, I hope I'm not putting too much pressure on his shoulders, but I think he could be the difference in this game, those sorts of passes which we don't have breaking the lines. And I do think he could be the catalyst for Liverpool going on to win the title this season, because he's just got that something different, which, those last 2 games probably spell out why we need him more than anyone else, because you'd fancy his chances of breaking down. If he played from the start against Newcastle, you'd fancy that Liverpool would have scored in that game, because he would have created a good chance or been involved in creating a good chance. And the same against West Brom. If he played in that game, he would have been able to pick a way through that defence, which was so tight and tightly packed in the middle of the park. So I think those sorts of games, he could be the difference, and that could be the difference in a season where everyone's dropping so many points. But yeah, this game, I think he could also make a difference. Presuming he starts, he might not start, might be needed to be eased back in, which is probably, to be fair, likely given the way the matches are coming, and Klopp won't want to take any risks over his fitness. But yeah, I've gone for Liverpool 2-1 in this one. I was very close to 1-1, but I've at the last second I've gone 2-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, actually, very, very similar. I sort of almost went for a draw, maybe hoping for a draw, but just, Liverpool 2-1 in the end. I just think after the Newcastle game, obviously be desperate to return to winning ways. And Southampton gone off a touch, haven't they? They were a really, really good period. I think obviously they drew at Arsenal, didn't they? Recently, goals have been a problem. They had the ball in the back of the net, didn't they, against West Ham? A really, really good goal from Danny Ings, but I think it was Che Adams, wasn't it? It was just offside in the build-up. So unfortunate, because it was a lot earlier in the move, and fantastic. You do fancy Southampton. I don't think there's an issue, a long-term issue. I just think is the goals have dried up a touch recently, but they've got enough quality in the final third to return to the score sheet as soon as possible. But Liverpool in this game, obviously Liverpool's defensive issues remain. There's still really big issues at the back for them. But like you say, Thiago coming back is obviously huge. He's such a wonderful player, and such a great player to have in the middle of the park when you are a side that has a lot of the ball, because he will do things that other players can't, like you say. So I think it's going to be a really tight game. It should be a really good game. Southampton, as we know, they like to play football. They're very, very high pressing, high energy football, and they went on a run, didn't they, where they scored twice at home for quite a while in a run of games recently. And obviously their form at home this season's been pretty good, whereas last season they weren't that good, were they? So it's obviously a game that wouldn't surprise me at all if it was a draw or Southampton were to win. But I just think after the Newcastle draw, Liverpool will be even more determined to get back to winning ways. So 2-1 Liverpool.
Both going for 2-1 Liverpool. Okay, thanks, Matt. We look forward to seeing how those games turn out. You can find previews for all of them, as usual, over on sportsmail.co.uk. You can subscribe to this podcast via all the usual channels, and you can subscribe on YouTube as well to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We've also got previews for many more games in Championship and European leagues as they come back after their brief winter breaks. Please be sure to tune in next time, which will be in the new year. Have a very happy new year. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.